Welcome, Mr. President Mbeki, President de Klerk. We are honored to have you here for this discussion. As you know, Partnership for Change is focusing this year on empowerment and dignity. And the process you went through in the South African history over the past decade is really an example of how dignity and respect has reached results. You, as visionary individuals, have had a goal and you have managed to reach the goal, although with difficulties underway. But I want to hear you elaborate on the importance of dignity, empowerment and integrity in the process that you went through.
I find myself in full agreement. We learned in the process of negotiation that building personal relationships became very important. There had to be a mutual acceptance of each other between me and President Mandela, between me and other people in my team and President Mbeki, who was a leading figure throughout the whole process as really the deputy to President Mandela. Between our two main negotiators, they developed a specific relationship. Cyril Ramaphosa from the ANC and Rolf Meyer from the National Party side. And those personal relationships helped at moments when everything was at risk, when there were deadlocks arising. It's those relationships which quite often found a door in a wall which you couldn't see at first sight. One telephone call would suddenly open up a door and reinvigorate the process. So yes, I agree with that. On the issue of dignity and empowerment, I would like to say that we reached agreement in the negotiations that there is an absolute need for that because of the discrimination of the past. Backlogs have developed, and some form of affirmative action is required. And although the word is not mentioned in the Constitution which we agreed upon said there shall be no discrimination, but there is a concept like fair discrimination in order to right the wrongs of the past. So there is in South Africa a process aimed at empowerment and aimed at restoring the dignity which people have lost because of apartheid. But in the end, the best route of empowerment and of building the dignity of people lies in empowering the individual through proper education, through proper training. The challenge is that each individual must be able to develop his or her full potential to the full. And the starting point should therefore be not social engineering. It has limited use and it can become dangerous and counterproductive. The starting point should be quality education and effective training.
President Mbeki, your thoughts about the process you went through. How important was the respect that you showed towards each other and the dignity and empowerment issues? How important was that for the results?
I think that what is important about these processes of change, I think a very important point is that people who are involved in these processes really always need to remember that this change is about people. It's about people. That this is the center and focus of the whole purpose of change, not institutions, or pieces of paper, agreements. In the end, you must ask the question, what has this done to people? Now, I'm quite sure that you couldn't possibly be sensitive to that particular issue, that change is about people, and then disrespect people. It would be inconsistent. And be contemptuous of their dignity. You couldn't be. You would be contemptuous of their dignity if you think that the institutions are better than people. So I think it's a very important point. So even in our case, as South Africans, change in South Africa was about South Africans. And in the end, all of us had to ask ourselves this question, all right, we'll stop beating each other up, and we will, let's construct a system such that we end this conflict and we find a way of living together as South Africans. Why? Because we're saying that this change has to impact positively on all of the South Africans. And here is South Africa, with its specific history, black and white, and here this population, which is black and white, they've got to find a way of living and sharing what is a common patrimony. And in the context of which you've got to be inspired by an understanding that you need to guarantee the dignity of each one of the South Africans. And you as their leader, really the reason that you'll be able to claim leadership is because you'll convince them that you respect them. If these people said that this one doesn't respect us, they'll say that's not our leader. And even therefore this empowerment thing, what is it that you've done, as President de Klerk says? What would you do to correct some of the imbalances of the past? Again, focused on this particular matter. So I'm saying even in the context of the issue of reconciliation, it really had to do with saying, we're all South African, whatever our history, we have to live together in peace and work together, build South Africa together, enjoy respect of one another and all of that. How are we going to get there? And the decision was, it's true, the things went wrong. Bad things were done. Crimes were committed. But if we want to live together, you cannot solve that problem saying, you are the accused, I am the accuser, and I'm going to get you. Because you won't achieve this. So let's deal with it in a different way. Let's indeed tell the truth about what happened in the past, and let people confront that bad thing. In part because so that we can say, please, let's not repeat this thing again in future. And as a part of that process, you then, of course, say, well, let's reconcile among ourselves and find some way of making reparations to those who had been victims of whatever abuses. Essentially, again, in order that you build this society, you focus. I might be personally, I might say, look, I mean, I was particularly hurt. My father was killed and my mother was killed and so on, and I wanted the people who did that to be punished. But in the end, you say, but the society is larger than me. There's millions of people. We need to be concerned about them. How do they, in the end, live together and overcome that past? I'm saying that the matter, I think, of understanding that the change, the sorts of change we're talking about, has to be focused on people. The social engineering that President de Klerk is saying, that just to be playing around with that is not going to solve the problem. What do you do about people? Empowerment through education, empowerment in all sorts of other ways. If I think there's that kind of focus, then indeed I think it's inevitable that would address these matters of dignity, of respect, of empowerment, and so on.
There's another challenge which we faced and continue to face, and I think which in increasing terms the whole world is beginning to face. And that is the challenge of diversity. we tried in our negotiations to accommodate, because one's dignity is tied to your identity as well. For instance, we agreed that there will be 11 official languages. No South African. There's no one language which all South Africans can speak or understand. We're a little Europe in that sense of the word. But with globalization, of the 200 countries in the world, already about 127 has important minorities comprising of more than 10% of the population. And the accommodation and management of diversity is the challenge of this century, one of the challenges, apart from the need to win the war against poverty and destitution. How do you accommodate important minorities, making them feel they can never, as an ethnic group or as a cultural group, achieve power in the country? But how do you make them feel accommodated, their concerns are being listened to, they are not marginalized, but they are regarded as an important building block of the greater whole? I think there lies a big challenge also for your organization in promoting dignity and in promoting the development of society in the right direction.